Today we're going to be focusing on preparation for paper 2, which is our literature paper. So we are going to go through the basics so that when we come to question papers, we finally know exactly what should be in place. We call this a study paper because it has to be read and studied for. You have to internalize the basics so that you can be able to adapt to any question that comes. It is also a very demanding paper, which is why we really need to do proper groundwork when coming to this paper. I am going to go through the most important components of the paper and how you prepare for it. So we're going to see what is expected of us when answering the literature paper. We are coming into an 80-mark paper where we have 30 marks for section A, and we have 25 marks for section B, and then we have 25 marks for section C. We have our poetry, we have our novel, and we have our drama. That's why we call it a study paper, because you have to go through your poems, you have to go through your novel, and then you have to go through your drama set work. We have 12 poems in total, remember? So as such, all those 12 poems must be internalized. So as we are coming in, we are going to discuss exactly how we're going to internalize all these things. When it comes to section A, it says you are given a choice of 4 questions, 3 contextual questions and 1 essay. 4 questions are based on your prescribed list. So when you say a prescribed list, we are talking of Sonnet 130, The Child Was Shot Dead by Soldiers in Nyanga, At a Funeral, Poem of Return, Talk to the Peach Tree, Prayer to the Mask, This Winter Coming, Solitude, It is a Beauteous Evening, Calm and Free, The Morning Sun is Shining, Fen Hill, and The Shipwreck. So any 4 questions from those 12 poems are going to come in, and therefore 3 will be contextual and 1 will be an essay. Automatically, you have to decide on which 2 poems you will answer. So it means out of the 4, you have to answer any 2. When we say 2 poems, you are going to answer any 2 poems there. So when you say 2 poems, please be very clear. It is any 2 of your choice. So you choose 2 for yourself and then you answer those. You may answer contextual question, 2 contextual questions is up to you, 1 contextual question, 1 essay, it's your choice. Please make sure that you choose your poem to answer based on the questions that are in front of you, not on personal preference. Look at the questions as they say, go through your question paper. This is where you say, I can answer these questions. I am getting at least 7 out of 10, which means I can pass this poem. But if you just choose on personal preference, you will struggle, because when you get to the questions, you decide, I'm struggling, but you'll get 4 out of 10. So that is not going to be an easy formula for you. You must study all 12 poems. Please do not spot. We must highlight this one. Please do not spot any poems. I have told my learners and told them that please do not have personal poems. I like this one. I hate this one. Do not leave any poems out. Know your poems. Know your content. You'll be fine. As you are doing the poems, you must be internalizing them and making sure you know all the components of the poem. A majority of us, I believe, are now in poem number 10, 9 and 10, somewhere there, because our syllabuses are coming almost to an end. So it means that at least now you must be having some poems to say, I know this one by heart, but I still need to work on this one. Know all your 12 poems, study for them, please. When you study poetry for each poem, ensure that you are studying the following. That's why I'm saying we're going through the basics today. The subject matter of the poem, which is the content. What is the poem about? Remember, this is where you internalize that Sonnet 130 is anti-compliments about the mistress, mockery of the other poets of the times. So you must be having a clear idea of the subject matter of the poem. So these are things that you are learning in class and must be internalizing. The structure of the poem. Remember, the other name for structure of the poem in the examination is form. So please, when it's coming into your structure, please remember the other name for structure is form. So when we are saying the structure of the poem, the question can say with reference to the form of the poem, you must be able to know this is an Italian sonnet, this is a Shakespearean sonnet, this is a free verse poem. Structure of the poem must be internalized. What impact does the structure of the poem have on the meaning or the message of the poem? So these are the things that we want you to be looking at. Juxtaposition is there. If it's not there, you must be able to identify it. You must be able to identify the octave, the rhyming couplet. So these are things that you must be internalizing and saying the structure of the poem now when it comes to this part of the poem switches the content, changes the content. Is there volta? Is there this? So you must be able to enjambment. So these are terminologies that come under the structure of the poem and you must internalize as you are studying. Are there stanzas? Are they equal in length? Is it short, long, mixed line lengths? Are there indentations in the poem? So if so, why is the poem written in that way? What impact does this have on your understanding of the poem? What are the themes? What are the messages in that poem? Who is the speaker? And what is her or his position in relation to that poem? Is the poem written in the first person narrative, second person narrative? Is the poet or the speaker speaking of some other event? So is it a literal meaning, figurative meaning of the poem? So majority of times when we're coming to our nature poems, we must be understanding that there's nothing literal there. When it comes to the morning sun is shining, it is a beauteous evening. It's all figurative meanings. So these are the things that we're talking about. Fanny Hill is symbolic because it's just an idealistic place in his mind, but that he needs and remembers because of the memories it holds. So those are the things that we must be focusing on when coming to the literal and the figurative meaning of the poem. As far as we're doing poetry, we are always on figurative meanings. So we must be able to specify the figurative part and be clear on that we understand what it stands for. Literary devices, remember this is imagery. So when you're talking of literary devices, you must be having at the back of your mind the other name so that you don't get lost. We're talking of imagery. So when we're talking of imagery, you must be able by now to identify it from a mile away. So when we're saying figures of speech, please identify your personifications, your repetition, your hyperbole, your similes, your metaphors, anaphoras. We have anaphora dominating this day in a majority of poems. So you must be able to see repetition of phrases. What do they do in the poem and what are they really giving you in the poem? Imagery, nature images, an image of a child, an image of nature. You must be able, mental pictures. When we say imagery, this one, we're talking of mental pictures that are coming up. So when we say mental pictures, when you are given the image of the sea, blue sea, so when we're talking of mental images, the blue sea gives an image of serenity, calmness. When we're talking about wild geese, we're talking of imagery of freedom. So when we say imagery, we're talking of those images that arise in our minds when we're given certain words or certain descriptions. Diction, word choice, it's been dominating a lot in the majority of papers. I think if you've been going through certain papers, you'll realize that diction is dominating. Comment on the use of this word and its impact in the line, in the stanza, in the poem. The tone, we must be able to see our tones. By now we all know when giving tone and mood and attitude, we always use adjectives. So I need you guys to be very specific when it comes to tone. Calm, charming, confident, energetic, enthusiastic, honest, happy, sincere, somber, vibrant, successful. These are the things, examples that we are having of tones that are adjectives, descriptive words. So we must be able to align ourselves to those ones. Atmosphere in the poem, tense atmosphere, calm atmosphere. I believe the morning sun is shining gives a beautiful, calm atmosphere because of the image of the sun rising up. But when we're coming to, what is this one? Poem of return. It's a very tense poem because he is demanding that can he not be acknowledged and celebrated when returning from exile. So these are the things. The child was shot dead by soldiers. The atmosphere is tragic because a young child has the dream stolen away, the future stolen away when they are shot dead at a very young age. So you must be able to be randomly able to identify the tones in your poems, your atmosphere, your mood. Rhetorical devices, rhythm and rhyme, punctuation. Is there punctuation or is there lack of punctuation, enjambment? How is this enhancing meaning or impact the meaning of the poem? So those are the things that we're expecting you to give us when coming in. Now, Fanny Hill, lack of punctuation is there to show the nostalgia and the urgency of him giving us the images and the symbolism of his childhood place in the countryside. How does this reinforce the speaker's message? A refrain, a phrase, line or group of lines repeated at intervals throughout the poem, generally at the end of a stanza. Repetition of words, phrases, syllables, or even sounds in the poem as a whole. Sound devices, alliteration, consonants, assonance, these must be identified. Onomatopoeia is also part of sound devices. So that's something that you must be able to know. Enjambment or run-on lines, I've mentioned this one. Feelings, the readers or the speakers, how do you feel? What are the descriptions that the poet is giving you, making you feel? How is the speaker feeling when they're narrating or describing this and that? These are our quick wins for the poetry essay. As I said, usually we have one essay there. The first question number one, is usually an essay. Right, when we're coming to poetry essay, these are the quick wins that we will share with you to come to the exam ready for, to prepare for, and to give to the markers. Read through the question and highlight. This is the key word. Please, we need to work together. Highlight the key words. Highlighters are working in our classrooms nowadays. Color pencils are working in our classrooms because we are now doing back-to-back answering of questions. Highlight the keywords that you need to explain in your essay. It is important to read the question or statement carefully and ensure that the essay is addressing the keywords in the question or statement. Make notes on your question paper on the side. I think I'm doing that as well. Make notes on your question paper. Use highlighters to identify keywords, phrases. To write the poetry essay, you must focus on the following. Diction. It must be quoted. That's the key word. It must be quoted and discussed. You do this for diction, you are getting away scot-free with beautiful marks. Quote the word, the phrase, discuss it in the context of the poem and the question. Imagery, relevant figures of speech, not just any. Please, you are answering imagery based on the key words. Connect. What you are taking, is it relevant to the key word that you have highlighted? So you are not just randomly taking figures of speech. There can be 8 figures of speech in a poem, but only 4 or 3 are relevant to the question. Those are the ones that should come in. So relevant figures of speech from the poem should be referred to and explained in relation to the question. The tone, appropriate words to describe the tone and explained. The key words are explanations. Please, let's discuss, let's explain everything. Whether you're talking of diction, you must be able to discuss, explain. Imagery, discuss, explain. Tone, discuss, explain. Identify the tone, and then you explain it in the context of the poem. Whether it's a tone according to a stanza, according to a line, according to the poem, as long as you still link the tone again to the keywords, you'll be safe. Your essay should be written in paragraphs. Please, let's specify and separate our work. Paragraphs must be given introduction, body, and conclusion. Those who are doing business studies, please, we do not give subtopics to our essays. What is done in business studies, can it remain there, please? Because when we are writing in the home language, we are strictly writing it, and now we don't have to specify that this is the introduction, this is the body, this is the conclusion. Remember, when you're writing our introduction, you must have the title of the poem, the author of the poem, and the key words. Usually that's what we do. So as a result, we must be able to follow that one. Title of the poem, author of the poem, the key words, so that you can be able to address the question. The body is you dividing your body into diction discussion, a paragraph on diction discussion, and paragraph on imagery discussion, a paragraph on tone discussion. These must be done. So please, let's make sure that when we are doing our body, we do not give an over-exhaustion of a paragraph whereby you'll have everything in one paragraph. Separate your content according to its structures. Separate your diction paragraph from your imagery paragraph from your tone paragraph, and then you will conclude and make a bold statement about what you have done. Do not paraphrase and lift, that is copying word for word from the poem. You must analyze the poem. As we are doing line-to-line analysis in classes, we are making comments. We are making generalizations. Those are the ones that are coming into the exam. So now when we're commenting on a word, when we're commenting on a line, those comments that we are doing as analysis are what are your answers for your essays must be. So please write your notes in class and make sure that you are able to account for a first line, second line, third line of the poem, fourth line of the poem, first stanza of the poem, general poem. So as a result, please, let's make sure that we do not just paraphrase. We must be specific. Diction is a word in a certain line. What is its impact? So you must refer to that comment that you did when you're analyzing those lines. When studying, also ensure that you have a full understanding of all prescribed poems. We will never get tired of specifying that all 12 must be known. So if you have 12 poems this year as a prescribed, all 12 poems must be internalized. This includes significance of the title of the poem. So you must know the title of the poem. For example, if we're going to talk about The Child Who Was Shot Dead by Soldiers in Nyanga, it is a narrative title, and as a result, but it is now a contrast to what the poem is, because in the title, the child is declared dead, but in the poem, the child is still alive, metaphorically. So the significance of the title of the poem is to bring the importance of the memory of the child, though the child is deceased. So please, let's study our poems. When we say, talk to the peach tree, this is symbolism. The title is symbolic of the fact that there must be communication. Peach tree is not a literal tree. It is a symbolism of coming together and gathering and decisions that are for the better of the future being made. So when we are coming in and saying solitude, loneliness, isolation, alienation, that's the significance of the title when we're coming into solitude. So you must be able to know the relevance and the significance of the title of the poem. You must have an overview of the poem. What is the poem about? So we must be able now to understand when we're coming in. Poem of return, when he says that, do not make me a hero and welcome me with flowers when I come back home from exile. He is actually asking that can he be made part of the pain that the people suffered when he was not there. You must be able to know the poems by now and be able to understand that an overview of the poem is based on what the poem is about, and you must be able to take it from the beginning until the end. The themes, which are the main ideas of the poem. When we're talking of prayer to the mass, we're talking of plea, the theme of pleading to the ancestors, salvation, the ancestors saving them, the ancestors bringing them their their dignity again. So you must be able to identify the themes in the poem. So poet's message, what did you learn from the poem? So these are the things that we need to understand and bring in. So when we're coming in, diction, meaning of words, phrases as used in the poem, tone and mood, figures of speech and its effectiveness and imagery. So these are what we call our basics to coming into the poetry section and saying, please, let's do this. Mark allocation must be adhered to. Okay, what we're going to do is just have a sampler of what we've just talked about so that we look at it in reality before we go to a question paper. Right, we've done At a Funeral by Dennis Brutus, which was for Valencia Majombozi, who died shortly after qualifying as a doctor. It says, at a Funeral, Dennis Brutus presents the senselessness of death if that death robs an individual of his or her potential. However, he also uses the concept of death as an encouragement to fight against that oppression that causes it. I believe we're now following the steps that we just started up there. We first start with the key words. Senselessness is a key word of death. Robs an individual of his or her potential. It's definitely coming out. That's key words as well. However, he also uses the concept of death as an encouragement. However, that brings a contradiction in your essay. He also uses the concept of death as an encouragement to fight against that oppression that causes it. And then they say it with close reference to the tone, the mood, the diction, and imagery used in this poem discuss the validity of the statement. There are three things, as we always have in our poetry essay. Tone is there, mood is there, diction, but now they gave also imagery. So this was a demanding question because it has 4 elements. Your response should take the form of a well-constructed essay. What is the meaning of well-constructed? We are talking about having an introduction, having a body, and having a conclusion. That's what well-constructed means. Our marker location is 10 marks, and our word count is 253 words. Use them. The more you give and move to 300, the more marks you will have. More points, more marks are awarded. We know the drill. The less you go, the less marks you'll get and the less points you have. So let's try and practice ourselves to make sure that we give the ultimatum 10 marks that we deserve. Use the following points among others. What are we looking at? This is what we're trying to say. When we're coming in, it says the speaker addresses the concept of death in general and the waste of life if a life is cut short before the person reaches full potential. What is this reference to? This is reference to Valencia's early death. Valencia's early death. So her life was about to reach full potential as she was about to graduate to become a full nurse. But unfortunately, her life is cut short. That's the waste of life that we are referring to in this poem. So as a result, he also uses the second stanza as a call to arms of sorts. When we say call to arms, this is what we call rebellion, revolution. I believe the other word is revolution for it. Call to arms is revolution. He states that it is better to die than submit to the powers of oppression. So as a result, when coming in now, this is you showing them that you understand whose life is cut short, what is the full potential that we're talking about, waste of life and what it means. Call to arms, revolution to fight against the oppression so that it is not repeated again in the future. This is the black people rising up and saying that we are fighting against this oppression as they've taken the life of one of our own. Valencia's life is not the only one. Her death is symbolism of the many lives that were lost during the apartheid era. It says the word A. Now this is where we're coming in. The word A in the title, if you realize in the title, it is written as at a funeral article. So as a result, this is what we are referring to. It says the word A in the title alludes to any funeral. It gives an impersonal tone. However, remember your question had a contradiction, which means you must be able now when discussing to give part number 1. What do we mean? You are going to give the senselessness of death, that death robs an individual or his or a potential. That's your first discussion. I believe that's your 1. But now, after discussing your 1 in a paragraph, you must give 2, which is a contradiction. So as a result, you must be able to give us a discussion of robbing an individual of his or her potential senselessness of death. However, you must give the contradiction where it talks about the concept of death as an encouragement to fight against that oppression that causes it. So now when we're coming in and saying there's an impersonal tone created because it now is impartial, impersonal, any funeral because of the word a. Not at her funeral, but at a funeral. However, there's the contradiction that we say it is there. Enclosed in parentheses is the speaker's tribute to a young lady, Valencia Majombozi, who was shot dead shortly after earning her medical degree and serving her internship. So now when we're coming in, we realize as much as it has an impersonal tone in the title, the poem itself is a tribute to a young lady because the tribute follows immediately after the title, if you remember. That brings us now to personalizing the poem. What did you do? You are talking about impersonal tone, yet there is personalization done by the tribute. So now we realize we are having two things that are contradictory. The tone is impersonal. The tribute makes it personal now because it makes specific reference to Valencia. She was killed by apartheid forces during the Sharperville massacre while protesting against the oppressive past laws. So as a result, we're saying a contribution, loss of life, senselessness. What is it? A contribution to a community as a young daughter will never be realized. And this is an indictment to the oppressive apartheid government of the time. So now we're talking about the senselessness of life, whereby her full potential and the benefits that the community could have reaped from her can never be experienced. So now we are coming in and saying she will never fulfill her passion and a dream because her life has been cut short. The first stanza describes the funeral. Black, green, and gold colors represents the flag of the resistance movement, making the reader aware that the funeral is both personal and political. The funeral ceremony is dignified with an elaborate display, the key word being elaborate. When we say elaborate, I think we are very clear. When it talks about all for sure, display of colors is given. Red, wine, and white pageantry of a fallen hero. This bears testimony to the speaker's respect for the deceased, who symbolizes the powerful, resilient spirit of young people in opposition to oppressive laws during the apartheid regime. It also represents the academic gowns and hoods. These colors also describe the uniform of the nurses who attended the funeral. The speaker mourns the loss of a young person who had enormous talent and potential, which have now gone to waste. The image of the grave being stubbled suggests the unkempt, poorly tended area given to the purple of color, showing disrespect for the burial site of the dead, which is another indictment of the oppressive regime. So as a result, they are abandoned, poorly tended. That's disrespect for the burial site of the dead. The word expectant of eternity personifies the graves that eagerly awaits the interment of body and expects to retain it for eternity. Death caused by the oppressive regime has acquired a potentially productive individual. Throughout stanza 1, there is a melancholic mood as the poet joins the other mourners in tribute to the deceased. The tone in stanza 1 is calm and reverent, which is in keeping with the poet's admiration for the deceased as suggested by the word salute. The onomatopic word gush suggests this outpouring of uncontrolled emotions of grief. The words burgled and the image digging slopes further emphasizes the somber melancholy of the bugle's notes heard throughout the graveyard. The entire land mourns for a wasted potential. It comes as a shock when the speaker calls all this pageantry and panoply. This suggests that the funeral is an outward display which is empty, because at the midst is a burial of a young woman whose gifts will never be fully used. explored, or fulfilled. So when we say it is empty, we mean that it has no meaning. So it has no meaning because it is a futile burial, as nothing will be gained beneficiary-wise in terms of Valencia. So as a result, that's why we call it an empty funeral display. The speaker wants the reader to ponder the significance of the gifts and talents that are lost to death. If the person is swallowed by the mud, the contributions they would have made to uplift their community has been taken. It is not just her body that is buried, but our hopes are too. She symbolizes every young person because she has been swallowed. What is this? Expectant, graves expectant of eternity. Graves are expecting more deaths. If the graves are expecting more deaths, it means that the more youth are dying, but now it means that the hopes of the other youth are dying as well. However, in stanza 2, there is a huge shift in tone as the poet makes a strong political statement. As we can see, contradiction must always come in. Renews his commitment to the fight for freedom in South Africa. It is a call to action. All you frustrate ones. When we say all you frustrate ones, it's all the remaining youth that are oppressed and under duration of the apartheid regime. The suggestion is that the frustrate ones are not literally dead, but their lives have been cut short, aborted was the word used, by the government, who regulates their lives by making them carry on books of birth. Carry on books of birth are the pass books, remember? This is reference to the pass books. So as a result, the pass book is actually their death penalty. So as much as they are alive, the pass book is the one that is taking away their freedom in their lives. So that's why we call it, they are not literally dead, but their lives have been cut short. His tone is commanding, arise, enraged, carry on books of life, of birth. Arise is an angry tone, enrage is contemptuous, commanding. So those are the things that we are coming up to, the past laws which dictated the lives of black people and restricted their freedom of movement. The poet stresses that humans were reduced to dead flesh. Carry on. From the moment of birth, a black person was given this passbook so that they would cease to be human beings from the point of birth. Existence, identity is taken away from them from birth. Thus, they would become carrion or dead flesh. The oppression under which they live forces them into a living death. Death is personified in line 8, but its power to end life is diminished because a more powerful and terrifying force identified as death's head tyranny, which is the oppressive apartheid government's dictatorial rule. By using the image of a skull and crossbones, death is ever present. The image of death as the grim reaper suggests that the oppressive government reaps people's souls. Their living under tyranny is like death. So, however, the final line of the poem, better that we should die than we should lie down, is ominous as the poet is motivated by the deaths of all those who have sacrificed their lives in the struggle against apartheid. He suggests death is a better option than succumbing to defeat. This is an adamant call for resistance against oppression. Revolution is being called for. Motivation to fight is being driven at the end of the poem. So as a result, better that we should die. Defiance. So those are the things that are coming in. Those are the comments that you are using now to write your essay. So as a result, that's what we are doing. We have also another type of essay question that you can use as a practice. So they will be pinned here so that you can be able to practice yourself, so that you can be able to get into the exam having proper knowledge of you discussing diction, tone, imagery. So as a result, I think specifications is what I was driving at when I say that, remember, you must specify, don't generalize. Let's look at how you'll be marked in the poetry essay. It's very important that we teach the rubric for the literary essay before you can even be marked. This will guide you to go into the exam exactly knowing what must be given and how you will be marked. The literature essay is 10 marks. So your criteria for being marked is divided into two categories. You have the first category, which is content. You have the second category, which is structure and language. 6 marks for content, 4 marks for structure and language. Let's look at the 6 marks, what they entail when it comes to content and being marked. We are looking at how you interpret the topic, the depth of the argument. The keyword is the depth. The keyword there is interpretation, justification, grasp of the text. Did you understand the poem? If you did understand the poem, it means it will be clear to see as we're marking you to say, this child is able to comment critically. This child is able to account for this. This child is able to explain this. How do you get the 6 marks? You must have an in-depth interpretation of topic. You must have a range of striking arguments, extensively supported from poem. Line 5, line 10, second stanza, that's your relevance. Excellent understanding of genre and poem. As I said, if you know your poem, it will be easy when being marked to identify that your knowledge of the poem is evident and it's clear. So if you do not do that, that's where you go below to the 4 mark category out of 6 for content, 3 mark category out of 6, 2 mark category out of 6. Let's look at this criteria whereby you failed the content part and you have a 0 to 1 mark allocation. What will you have done? No understanding of the topic, no reference to the poem. The keyword is none. It's missing. No reference to the poem, which means you are generalizing. Learner has not come to grips is the key word with genre and poem. So these are the things that we are coming into and talking about. For you to pass your 6 marks, please let us show knowledge of the poem. Study all your poems to be safe. Any poem can be an essay question. I believe in class we've been trying to groom our learners to say, do the essay question in this poem, do the context in this poem, so that you can go with all the 12 poems knowing the context and the essay questions. Let's go to the second category of the 4 marks, which is structure and language. They say structure, logical flow, and presentation, language, tone, and style used in the essay. How do you get 4 marks in structure and language? Coherent structure is the first one. Arguments, well structured, clearly developed. Language, tone, and style, mature, impressive, correct. You must be virtually error-free of grammar, spelling, and punctuation. You can't go into the exam not knowing how to spell machombozi. You can't go into the exam not knowing how to spell pig and tree when it's given to you up in the poem. You can't go into the exam not knowing what melancholic is and you don't know how to spell it. So this is what we mean when saying when studying your poem, know their terminologies, know the words that are appropriate to use and know how to spell them right. So if you do not give this, it means you are going to fail this and get a 0 to 1 category or 1 category. Faulty planning, poorly structured, not logically arranged, or serious language errors, and style, inappropriate tone and style. So please practice your essay question, as this will help you in the long run. Now when we're coming to context questions, mark allocation is your key. Please, let's follow the mark allocation as much as possible. What do we say? Once you select the poems that you are going to answer, highlight the keywords, account for, discuss. Please look at these words and make sure you know what is supposed to be done. Critically discuss, critically comment. So those are the things that we want to drill in you before you go into the exam. You were given this, I'm sure, in paper 1. They do still apply in paper 2 because a keyword is a keyword in any subject. To account for is the same in any category. To discuss is the same in any category or paper or subject. To comment is the same in any category. So please study those keywords. The mark allocation will guide you as to how much you need to write. Be very precise, please. There is no need for lengthy answers. I call them essay answers. Please do not waste your time over explaining, over discussing. 3 marks means that there are 3 things to be discussed, and that's it. 2 marks, sometimes 3 marks says there are 2 things identified, fully explained and discussed. So be very sure of the type of question that you have. It says there is no need for lengthy answers as this is time consuming and sometimes you may not be able to complete the paper. Be very conscious of time management. Unseen poem now. This is our question number 5. Remember, we've been talking of question 1 to 4. But now we're on question number 5, which is a compulsory question. We do not study it as the prescribed poems. We find it for the first time in the examination, and therefore all the skills that we have been teaching you for the 12 poems are going to be used to analyze the prescribed poems, and we'll analyze the unseen poem in the exam. So we still look at the structure, we still look at the tone, we still look at the mode, we still look at diction, we still need to look at the message, we still need to look at the themes. So we still follow the same type of method when coming to the unseen poem. The only difference is that we do not study it before the exam. We find it for the first time in the exam, and when we find it for the first time in the exam, it means that we must be able to study it immediately on answering and be able to give what is relevant. So that's our poetry section when we are coming into the exam. So please, let's study our poems properly. One of the things that we need to be very clear with you is that you must be ready for any poem to come in. Any poem, not just the one that you like. Any poem will approach, whether it's poem 1, as you did as poem 1, or poem 7, or poem 12. Any of those will be in your exams, June exam, prelim exam, final exam. So please don't generalize on the poems. That is what we had on the basics and the foundation of doing poetry. Now, what we're going to do now is to, I think I've been touching on poems as we go along so that I can do a variety of examples, and it will help you now to say, oh, okay, I know this. I'm going to go to a question paper that we're going to use as a practice of what we've just done. All right, this is our poem. The child was shot dead by soldiers in Nyanga. This time we had an essay question. It says the poem is an emotional protest against tragic circumstances. Now we're following the advice that we gave each other. What do? We underline the keywords. Emotional protest is the first one. When we come in and say the poem is an emotional protest, we're going to underline emotional protest. Against tragic circumstances is underlined. With reference to diction, 1, there's discussion, imagery, 2nd, discussion, tone, 3rd, discussion. Discuss the effectiveness of the poet's emotive style. Your response should take the form of a well-constructed essay of 250 to 300 words in length. Right, so this is the first one that we're going to try and discuss and to internalize. I think we did at a funeral. Now we're going to a sample of another essay, which is the child was shot dead. All right, what are our expectations here when it comes to this poem? So we must be able now to talk about the issue of what is the emotional protest that we are talking about, tragic circumstances that we are talking about. So those are the things that we're expecting. So what do we mean? I believe when we say emotive, it's the tragic circumstances and the death of the child. So this poem is an emotional protest. What is it protesting against? Is protesting against the apartheid system. So as such, these are the things that you are coming in and giving into the poem. When we say emotional protest, tragic circumstances, death of a child. So as a result, the repetition of the child is the one that comes up already. When we are coming in and talking about the repetition of the anaphora. So already, remember we said imagery, diction, imagery, and tone. Let's start on imagery without wasting any time. On imagery, what are we taking? Anaphora, is the first one. The child. The repetition of the anaphora, the child, means that we are talking about the tragedy of the age of the child. So when we're talking about the repetition of that anaphora, it emphasizes on the loss of life or at a young age. So the child dies at a very young age, and therefore it means that his life is cut short. We also have the repetition of raises his fist, screams. They are also repeated. Those are also, repetition is also coming in. Raises his fist. We are also having the repetition of screams, and therefore that is evidence, violence, rebellion, violence, protest, anger. So that's commenting on you giving what the repetition does. So you must be able to specify. That's why we say you must be able to discuss, you must be able to explain. Because now when you're talking of certain repeated words and phrases, you must know what they're in reference to, as we are giving examples here. So now when we're coming, protest is when you say protest, it's against the older generation. When you say older generation, the mother, the father, who submissively protested and did not do enough to save the child's life by changing the circumstances. So now when we're coming in, we're saying, why is there a need to rebel? Why is there a need to protest? Why is there a need to be angry? The child feels was never protected, and therefore feels the parents could have done better in trying to protect him. So these are the things that we're talking about when coming into discussion and explanation of certain things. Now, when we're coming in and talking about the tone in the first three stanzas, when we're talking of the tone in the first three stanzas, we have screams the smell, we have raises his fist. Again in stanza 2, raises his fist. The child is not dead, neither there nor there. What do we mean? The tone there is a tone of anger, a bitter tone, a resentful tone, a cynical tone. Any of those are appropriate, but you must be able to discuss. So when we're saying angry tone, bitter tone, resentful tone, cynical tone, this is now coming in to give us the violent imagery and diction that is in those stanzas. Blood, justice, armed pride. So now we realize exactly what is bearing on the tone of anger, the tone of resentment. So as such, hearts under siege. So those are the things that they are bitter against when we say in the locations, in the underdeveloped places where they were segregated to. This is where we're coming in and talking about heart under siege. So when you are giving, but now when we come to the final stanza, you see there is a contrast now, because there's a peaceful tone there, which was in contrast to the previous violent stanzas before. Why? When we say peaceful, we are talking about the child now is actively participating in, in legislations, in meetings. The child becomes a symbol for change. So as a result, violence and protest will no longer be needed because the child is present in the meetings, in the legislations. The child is now being used as a symbol, not only in South Africa, but in the continent and globally in the world. So these are the things that we are talking about when coming in to the essay questions that please specify. We're also talking about the paradox. The child was shot dead in the tiger. But then there is a protest now because it keeps saying the child is not dead in the poem. So when we're coming to the paradox now, we are realizing that although he is physically dead, his memory lives on and he becomes a symbol of the apartheid violence and the protests against it. So it means that we are raising things that are now relevant for us talking about what is this one? This poem and the feelings that are raised. So when it comes to diction, remember it's specific words, not all of them specific words. Screams can be used as diction. No can be used as diction, whereby the no is a strong argument of saying the child is not dead there in those places. So when we're talking of diction, you are taking several words and discussing them. No, you are actually commenting and saying the use of the word no emphasizes the number of different places where protests and violence have taken place. Nyanga, Sharperville, Philippi, Langa. So he's not dead in any of those places, he says, emphasizing that his memory is the one that is being used in those places to change their situation of being segregated and under the apartheid regime. So now these are the things that we are supposed to be doing. Justice, blood, armed pride. You are commenting when you're talking to armed pride. That's an emotional protest. Because why? When we say armed pride, we are talking about their determination to fight still at a young age. The remaining youth are going to fight at a young age and therefore will die a proud death because they will carry the gun to go and fight against the system that is segregating them. So when we're coming in and saying armed pride, we are talking about the issue that we have to specify that the children or the youth that is remaining is very young. Very young as they are, they've decided to take a decision. When they take a decision, they are going to go out in the streets, protest, march, and fight, and therefore they are even willing to sacrifice their lives and die because they are doing what is right. So these are the things that we are talking about. These are the things that we are talking about when coming to armed pride and anything that has to do with diction and tone and imagery in the poem. So now, when we are coming to an essay question, please make sure that you align yourself and you are able to bring in the key components. And when you bring in the key components, divide them into categories. Then you'll be able to get the marks. All right, that is our essay question for the exam. I think we've done 2 essay questions. At least you must be able to understand essay question. 300 words, you can do it. Diction, comments, take out, imagery, the personification there, the anaphora there, the repetition there, the paradox there. See, you can get away with it. Tone, sarcastic tone, angry tone, a tone of protest. You'll be a peaceful tone at the end. So as a result, this is what we call an essay question. All right, let's go to Sonnet 130. My Mistress's Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun. We did this poem in grade 11. I think, yes, we did this poem in grade 11 and we are doing it again in grade 12. Strangely enough, people took it for granted last year and told themselves that it will not be in the exam because it's been done before. It was in the end of year exam, if you remember, and learners who understood that you have to study everything were very happy because it was an essay question as well in the exam. So as a result, now we are not on essay question, we are on context today. So as a result, we're going to try and get through this context as examples of poems. I'm not taking all poems, I'm just taking a sampler question paper and saying, let's try and see what we're supposed to do. Context question, mark allocation is a key here. Please make sure you align yourself. 2 marks is 2 marks, please. 2 points, proper explanation, not over-explained. I'll keep emphasizing on this one. All right, so it says refer to line 8. The breath that from my mistress reeks, that's from line 8. And then it says account for the poet's use of the word reeks in this context. I usually ask learners, what type of question is this? This is definitely a diction question. So which means you have to comment. We are definitely making a comment on diction. So which diction are we commenting on? We are commenting on Rix. So what is Rix in context of the poem? We are talking of a strong and pleasant smell. Strong and pleasant smell. That's you giving a comment about this word, Rix. So it suggests a strong and pleasant smell. So why is he using this word to describe the smell of his mistress's breath? This is an unflattering description, we must be clear. Unflattering description of the mistress's breath. So we are coming in and saying it suggests she is imperfect, which is the main intention of what he's doing, remember, in the octave. So as a result, when you are commenting, you are now going to take the word first. Number one. This is your number one. The word Rix suggests a strong and unpleasant smell. That's your first answer. Your second answer is that this is an unflattering description of the mistress's breath. Or you can even say this is further evidence of how she is imperfect or her imperfection. So this is 2 marks, you are done. You don't need to over-explain, over-emphasize, just 2 points, you move. That's your 2 marks. So as a result, this is your number 2 point. You'll be done. 1 mark, tick. Second mark, tick. You have your 2 marks. Go on to your next question. In your own opinion, is Sonnet 130 a typical example of a sonnet? The key word there that we must underline is typical. We start there. I think we've been using this word so much when talking of the sonnet. It is not a traditional sonnet because the word typical in reference to this poem refers to the traditional sonnets that are filled with flattering, flowery language. Flattering, flowery language. That's a typical poem or sonnet. So as a result, this one does not have the flattering, flowery language. So our answer becomes a no. It is not a typical example of a sonnet. It means that we are saying that in this sonnet, he is on the mistress's realistic flaws and the reality of her physical features. Realistic flaws and flattering physical features. That's what we are talking about. So no, this is definitely not a typical example of a sonnet. This is when we came into this poem, remember in the historical background where we talked about the issue that typical poets of the times wrote typical poems or sonnets based on trying to impress, exaggerate on the beautiful features of the mistress using flattering, flowery language. So as a result, Shakespeare is not writing this sonnet to impress. So he does not use any flattering, flowery language. He actually uses realistic flaws and flattering physical features descriptions, which show us that he is not following the conforms of a typical example of a sonnet. So our answer is definitely a no. We go to number 2.3. Refer to line 12. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Discuss the effectiveness of this line in conveying the central message of the poem. Now our key words, we underline, please always underline. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Central message is our key. We are on the walk now. So as a result, effectiveness must be given as well. Central message of the poem must be given. I believe the central message is that the mistress is human. That's the central message that we have. All right, central message. Mistress is a human. The mistress is a normal person. So when he comes in and gives us the central message, normal person with faults, that's what we are getting here as the central message. So now what are we saying? It means that she does not glide. Now we talked about the central message. This is the central message. Now we have to go back to the poem, treading on ground. Does not have a graceful walk. Does not have a graceful walk. That's what we mean. And does not glide. These are the things that we're expecting, like a goddess. Because says treads on ground, so does not glide like a goddess. Instead, what does she do? The mistress walks heavily on the ground like any normal person. We are not immortals, which means we do not float like the gods. That's what we mean when we say does not glide like a goddess. Instead, she steps and walks like a normal person. Those are your mark allocation for talking about the central message, treading on the ground. Let's go to the next question. Critically discuss the change in tone in the final 2 lines of the poem. When we say the change in tone, what do we mean? Right. The tone, to start with, sarcastic, mocking, towards the typical poets or his fellow typical writers. He is not mocking the mistress, he is mocking the typical poets, those who wrote the traditional sonnets that we talked about in 2.2, those who flatter, those who use flowery language, those who lie as a compliment. So as a result, that's the tone of the poem. It is sarcastic, it is mocking. Please, can we be very clear? He is not mocking the mistress. He is actually mocking the typical love poet writers. So that's what we are talking about. What do? He is mocking them because they attempt to lie and immortalize their mistresses, and as a result, they pretend their mistresses do not have faults. But what changes? Your answer must be very clear. It says change. But in lines 13 and 14, this changes. Why? When you say it's change, we also can bring blunt, a tone in the first 12 lines, because he clearly describes the mistress's faults, flaws, in a tongue-in-cheek manner. In a tongue-in-cheek manner. That's another tone that can come in. But in lines 13 to 14, it changes now, because in lines 13 to 14, what does it do? It switches. What does the tone become in lines 13 to 14? Sincere. Become sincere because his love is genuine. So this is what we are expecting you to clarify on. So as a result, he loves her despite her flaws. This is you now showing knowledge of why he's sincere or why his love is genuine, because he does not focus on her physical flaws. This is your 10 marks. Context. If you look at the mark allocation, 3 marks was given for that. 2 marks was given for that. Please do not give essay answers or lengthy answers unnecessarily. Get straight to the point and answer the question. All right, we have Solitude by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And then let's go and see. Remember, this is a poem based on Emma being in a train on her way to a ball. and as a result, she met a stranger in the train and therefore is drawn to the person's sorrows and as such the person's loneliness, because she describes the same incident of emotions that we feel in this poem. When we are happy, happiness is shared. People are happy with you. But when you are crying and are in despair or in pain, you are all alone. Remember, this poem is a juxtaposition of emotions. Juxtaposition is, remember, it is a contradictory. Line 1, he says, laugh and the world laughs with you. He juxtaposes it with weep. So it's the opposite of what is in line 1. Line 2 gives the opposite of what is in line 1. Same again in line 5, sing and the hills will answer. The difference again is in the opposite sigh. It's lost on the air. It does that throughout the whole poem. Line 9, rejoice, but the opposite is given and juxtaposed in 10 as grief. Line 13, be glad, juxtaposed in line 14 by being sad. So he will give a juxtaposition, give a reason, and then he'll juxtapose again, and as a result, that's how the poem goes. It's fixed until we get finally somewhere towards the end of the poem. So now let's go to the poem and see what must be done. Right, in your own words, briefly state the central message of the poem. Let's underline our key words, please. In your own words, briefly, there was the key central message of the poem. It's 2 marks, so you have to be brief. You can't go far. What is it saying? As we said, laugh, cry, happy, sad. So let's see what is done there, and we must be able to give it in the shortest version possible because they say it briefly. What does it say? It says, during good times, family, friends, or the world will be with you to share your happiness. But during the bad times or during difficult times, you are all alone because no one is there. Everyone turns their back on you. All right, let's see and put it down in words to see what we are saying. 2 points. We must be brief. During good times, good or happy times, family, friends share with you the happiness with you. But during difficult times, you are alone. You are alone. That's what we are saying. 2 points. 1, 2. Briefly, we had to follow the instruction. It had to be brief. This poem focuses on 2 elements of our lives. When we say 2 elements of our lives, we're saying the good times and the bad times. Alienation and happiness, sharing of good times. Let's go to 3.2. Briefly discuss 1 element of style used by the poet to create emphasis. They said 1. Briefly again, we underline our key words. Briefly discuss. Okay. 1 element of style, create emphasis. Okay. What do we use to repetition is one of them. Definitely. That's 1 style that you can discuss. Repetition. Laugh and the world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. That's emphasis. Contrast. It emphasizes the contrast of experiences. That's 1 style. We also have juxtaposition, as I've mentioned. That's another style that is used. We can also mention juxtaposition. Definitely juxtaposition. Juxtaposition, we are talking about laugh, weep, That's juxtaposition. As I mentioned, he says laugh, he says weep there, grieve and cry and something else again there. I believe he says sing, sigh, rejoice, grieve. So it also contrasts the experiences as well. What is the other one that can be used? Rhyme scheme can be used as a style. The rhyme scheme juxtaposes as well. So rhyme scheme is also coming in as a style, because the rhyme scheme in every second line, if you look at every second line, that's something that is of alone, own. So those are the things, so those are the things that we are talking about when it comes to the rhyme scheme as well. Any of those is appropriate. You just needed one. Refer to lines 5 to 8. Sing in the hills. What did he say in lines 5 to 8? Let's go back. He says, sing and the hills will answer. Sigh, it's lost on the air. All right. Now when we're coming in, the question says, comment on the effectiveness of the imagery in these lines. Sing in the hills, voicing care. Okay. Imagery, it says comment. Let's underline our keywords of the imagery. Personification is being done, so that's our imagery. We have personification of the hills. Sing and the hills will answer. So we have personification of the hills. So it says we'll have to comment on the personification of the hills, whereby we're saying when you express joy, you get joy in return. When you express joy, you get joy in return. And then it says sigh. The second part is the sigh. When we're talking about lost in the air, no response in return. When you are sad, that's what we're talking about. And then it says, critically comment on the effectiveness of the title in the context of the poem as a whole. The title is Solitude. That's our title. So, Solitude. That's our title. We have to comment on the effectiveness of the title. Remember the comments we made when discussing solitude. We talked about emphasis on being alone. On being alone. So the central message, people are just going to be with you in good times. In good times, you have company. You have company. However, they disappear during bad times. So now we are talking about people's support is never genuine, cannot be relied on. So those are the things that we are bringing in now. Is never genuine, cannot be relied on, for you to get through any negative experiences. So as a result, you have to give what solitude means, or what it symbolizes, or what it refers to. And then now you have to bring it to the context of the poem as a whole. So as a result, People only support you when you don't even need the support because you have everything, you're happy. But when you really need their support, they are not there, which means it's never genuine, and therefore they cannot be relied on. So those are what we call context questions when it comes to poetry. All right, let's go to the next question. It is a beauteous evening, calm and free. Okay, nature poem it is, Western poem it is. So let's come and see what we have. Okay, it says account for the capital letters used in being, line 6, and temple in line 13. Temple. So it's talking about the capital letters, capital letter T, being there. Okay, what does it mean when we're talking to being? Let's come to this one first. The mighty being, this is reference to God. So when we say it's a reference to God and nature, because he's a divine creation. That's reverence for us. He is a divine creation, and therefore that's why we show reverence to him in this instance. So when we're coming in and talking about capital letters, it emphasizes the importance of God, emphasizes the importance of nature, and acknowledges, that's reverence, acknowledges him as a divine creator. So as a result, that is the being here. Create temple there, reverence, worship, we're still there in the same place. So that's what we're talking about when it comes to being and temple with the capital letters. And then it says, refer to line 2, the holy time is quiet as a nun. Explain the effectiveness of the simile in this line. If you realize it became a 2 mark because they've already given you the imagery, which means they specified that it's a simile. Instead of them saying identify the figure of speech, they say it explain the effectiveness. So please, let's make sure that we are able to give the effectiveness fully this time and get your 2 marks. It says the holy time is quiet as a nun. Nuns spend a great deal of time praying in silence. Pray in silence. That's what nuns do. They pray in silence. So now they are close to God, which brings them closer to God during prayer. Okay, that's the reference to the nun now that we are bringing. And we're saying now, therefore, what do they link it to now? They link it to the quiet beauty of the evening. This is linked to the quiet beauty of the evening. This is linked to the quiet beauty of the evening. So when you're saying quiet beauty of the evening, presence of God in nature is linked. Presence of God in nature is given there. Briefly explain the poet's message to the child in the sestet. Right, when we're coming in and say to the child, remember first this poem deals with nature, and then now it addresses the child now at later on. It says in this instance, even though she is not as moved by the beauty of the scene, she is no less holy than he is. So children are automatically closer to God. Though she does not outwardly worship God, God is still with her. Presence of God, God is present in her life, even though she does not acknowledge him. Thou liest in Abraham's bosom all the year. That's what he says. So he says the children are in their nature closer to God. In nature, she's closer to God. That's my second point. And I believe my third point is that despite her not being moved by the beauty of the creation, My 3 points are intact there. She's too young to understand the deepness of the creation and the connection of God to nature, but all the same, God is present in her life, and because it's nature, she's close to God, even though she doesn't even realize it. The last poem says, discuss how the structure of the poem supports its context. We have to talk about the structure of the poem. Remember, we must be clear on this one. This is an Italian sonnet. You specify Italian sonnet, 14 lines. I'm going to go thorough on this one. Line 1, it's octave. Line 1 to 8, octave. Line 9 to 14 is a sestet. We are very clear on this one. What does the octave do? Expresses the speaker's awe of nature. Beauty or creation of God. That's him acknowledging God's creation, admiring God's creation and its beauty. That's line 1 to 8. But now when we move on, what do? It says line 9 to 14. In line 14, he is now going on the spiritual part. Spiritual understanding of how his daughter is affected. Line 1 to 8 focuses on the nature. Line 9 to 14 focuses on the spiritual part of the speaker. So we must be clear. Line 1 to 8, he feels a connection to God through the natural elements and the natural beauty. In line 9 to 14 now, it goes on a spiritual understanding and also on focusing on how him and the daughter are affected by this. How his daughter is affected by this as well as himself. Not only his daughter. Him and his daughter are affected by all this. That's what the contents are. And then you'll have a beautiful explanation of what we mean by structure. Specify 2 parts, line 1 to 8 called the octave, line 9 to 14 called the sestet. Break down the octave touches on this on the contents, line 9 to 14 the sestet touches on this on the contents. All right, that is samplers of our poems. I think today we tried to accommodate a variety, and as a result, just to give you a guide of how you're supposed to do it. But now let's go to the unseen poem. Remember, we meet it for the first time in the exam, which means we must just get an understanding of what it's supposed to be, and therefore let's go and see what we're supposed to do. The moon, Beck Hemsley. I took a photo of the moon when it was full and bright, and it glowed a vivid silver as it shone against the night. Its face I had to capture in all its beaming glory, but the picture of my camera told a very different story. See, the photo moon I saw was far less silver, far more gray, and where it had been glowing, all its glow had seemed to fade. That perfect circle in the sky had its edges blurred, and the moon within the picture looked a million miles from Earth. And it sort of got me thinking about every single time I'd believed what I had heard, that the camera never lies. So I'd seen myself in photos and I picked out all my flaws and I told myself that these were things that everybody saw. But when the camera blurs it or eclipses it from view, when its glow cannot be captured, then we do not blame the moon. And even with its craters, when it's covered by the clouds, when it's barely just a silver, then we do not talk it down. It's a nature poem. It is a nature poem. So let's come and see exactly what is expected of us here. Beautiful poem. Of course, most of the times learners complain, so let's be like the moon, holding our own amongst the stars, because everybody sees us as they find us as we are, and smile for the camera. But don't let it dull your shine, and do not believe the things you hear, because the camera often lies. Right, let's go to the questions and see what we were supposed to do. Refer to stanza 1 to 4. Refer to stanza 1 to 4. That's an instruction. Explain why the speaker is disappointed in these stanzas. Explain why the speaker is disappointed in these stanzas. Let's go back again so that you can quickly remember. He took a photo when it was full and bright, and it showed against the night. He had to capture its face, its beaming glory, but the picture that was on the camera was a different one because it told a different story, he says. And then he says, the moon, photo moon that he saw was less silver, far more gray. Where it had been glowing, the glow had seemed to fade. That perfect circle in the sky had its edges blurred, and the moon within the picture looked 1,000,000 miles from Earth. All right. So it says, let's specify, it says, explain why the speaker is disappointed in the stanzas. All right. He admires the moon, but when she takes a photo of it, the moon looks small and dull. I believe there was a contradiction of the actual image of moon and the photo image. There were two different things. What do we mean? Actual image of the moon, he says the moon is big and bright. Big, bright. But the photo image, when she takes the moon, it looks small and dull. So that's the contradiction that we mean, small and dull. So now we realize she's disappointed that her photo does not capture the beauty of the actual image or the real thing. So that's where the problem lies. That's a disappointment. I am seeing this, but when I take a photo of it, it's completely different. It's big and bright when I see it, but it's actually small and dull when I look at it in the photo. Briefly explain the poet's message. I believe it's no longer about the moon anymore. I believe it's talking about, like the moon, we have two ways of representation. We should not focus on our flaws. We should continue to shine even if others don't see the shine. So we shine, but when others see us, they don't see the shine. So now we realize that we should not focus on what people say. That's the message. It's no longer literal now. It's now a figurative meaning. Figurative meaning is what we are coming here. Our flaws, our strengths, and therefore we must focus on what we know of ourselves, on what we know of ourselves. Right. Refer to line 26. Let's go to line 26. Line 26 says, but when the camera blurs it or eclipses it from view, that's line 26, or eclipses it from view. And then the question says, critically comment on the poet's use of diction in this line to enhance the message of the poem. I believe eclipse is what we're going to focus on now, because now when we are using, when we are doing a diction question, we must be able to identify the words we're commenting on. Eclipse is going to have to be commented on. It says critically comment to enhance the message of the poem. So now when we're coming in, it is, when we're coming to saying eclipse is it from view, shields. That's the effect of the camera, shields it. That's the effect of the camera on the moon. It shields it. So that's what we are talking about here. And then now what does it do? It dims the light. And therefore, when it dims the light, now it says it does not now reflect the true nature. When it's dimmed, when it's shielded, it does not give the true nature, of the moon and its beauty. So that's what we mean. In your own opinion, is the moon a suitable title for the poem? Support your answer with evidence from the poem. This is a yes or no question, remember. If you're saying yes, you must substantiate. If you're saying no, you must substantiate. So you must be able to give a specific reason why you're saying yes and why you are saying no. So as a result, it's two ways. Substantiation is what is going to count for you. So basically, it's a figurative poem, definitely. So as a result, now it's the main message is that people must take it as an extended metaphor. Compares the moon to the people, that's what it does. And therefore, how critical it is that we think about how we're being viewed by people. So as a result, you can say, no, it's not, because figuratively it is talking about people, and therefore there's no indication of that in the title. But if you say, yes, it is specific, it means you are saying that reality and photograph are never the same. So a reflection of what is given in the camera will not be what really it is. And therefore, that's where the comparison always comes in. So it's also on, as long as you can support yourself, you can get away with a lot of things in paper 2. So I think it's how you angle your answer and how you angle your views of what you see for the poem. That will make your 30 marks of that section, because you will have to choose 2 of your prescribed poems and 1 unseen. And therefore, that brings us to the end of our session for today as you prepare for your poetry section. Thank you very much. Sections were easier to go through. Some sections they felt were a bit challenging. African poetry pulled us through today because we had 3 poems from the African continent: Prayer to the Mass, At a Funeral, and This Winter Coming. And then we had the Solitude coming in as well. Let's go and see what was expected of us. The essay poem was based on Prayer to the Mass by Leopold Senghor. So we are going to try and see exactly what we were expected to do. It says in Prayer to the Mass, the speaker shows that despite hardships, okay, we underline our keywords. The African people, definitely we will underline, will persevere. We are there as well, so that we can be able to know what is expected of us. We will underline, will persevere, right? will persevere and create new prosperity. With close reference to diction, imagery, and tone, critically discuss the validity of the statement. So when we are coming in, we are supposed to focus on the diction that shows the perseverance and the opportunities that the Black African people created to become prosperous and free, despite the hardships that they went through. Diction, imagery, and tone. All right, let's go and see what we could have used for this essay. All right, we are going to categorize and see what we do. We are going to put the first column that becomes our diction. We're going to put the second column that becomes our, my apologies, that becomes, my apologies. It will become our imagery. So that will be the second thing that we do when it comes to this poem. Right. Imagery. Oh my word. What have I just done? We have our imagery as well that will come through for us in the second line. And then we also have our tone. So those are the 3, 1, 2, and 3. So we bring our imagery here, and then we bring our tone. So those are the 3 categories that we're going to focus on and see what we bring as necessary to be discussed under diction, imagery, and tone. Under our diction, despotism must not be left out. If we go to our poem, despotism is in line 10. Now, while the Africa of despotism is dying, we are going to take that word without fail